Marcus was 39 years old, an HVAC technician with a salary of $61,000 a year, and his life had become a low, suffocating hum of resentment. The source of that hum was currently sitting in his favorite armchair, a worn but comfortable lazy boy he'd paid $900 for 5 years ago, flicking through channels with a discontented sigh. Loretta, his mother-in-law, had been living in their modest West Boulevard bungalow for 6 months, and each day felt like a year. The house, once his sanctuary, now felt like a cage. His wife, Bianca, stood by the mantelpiece, arranging a set of worthless glass figurines Loretta had brought with her. She adjusted a tiny porcelain swan, her back to Marcus. The silence in the room was heavy, broken only by the click of the remote and the faint scent of the chicken and rice he'd cooked for dinner, a meal Loretta had described as pedestrian. "This television is so small," Loretta said, not to anyone in particular. It was a 42-inch Samsung, a perfectly fine television that had cost Marcus $650 on a Black Friday deal. "In my condo in Ballantyne, I had a 60-inch. You could see the pores on the news anchor's face." Marcus didn't respond. He was sitting at their small dining table, a $500 oak set from a local furniture store, staring at a pile of bills. The electric bill was up 20% thanks to Loretta's insistence on keeping the thermostat at a sweltering 78 degrees, even in the Charlotte spring. His hands, calloused from years of installing and repairing air conditioning units, rested on the polished wood. He felt a familiar tightness in his chest. Bianca finally turned, her face a mask of practiced patience. "Mother, we've talked about this. We're helping you out. We have to be a little more frugal." "Frugal?" Loretta scoffed, her eyes landing on Marcus. "Is that what we're calling it? I call it cheap." It was a small, 2-bedroom bungalow on a quiet street in the West Boulevard neighborhood, built in the 1950s. It wasn't glamorous, but it was theirs. The price was $175,000, a fortune to him. His down payment had been $20,000, every penny he'd saved from a decade of working overtime, of climbing into sweltering attics and crawling through damp crawl spaces. Bianca, who was then working as a receptionist at a law firm for $42,000 a year, had contributed nothing to the down payment, promising to help furnish the place. He remembered their first weekend there, painting the living room a soft, hopeful yellow. They'd ordered a $25 pizza and eaten it on the floor, their backs against the wall, dreaming of the future. He'd felt like a king. He was a homeowner, a provider, a husband building a life. He handled the mortgage payments himself. It was simpler that way, he'd told her. His paycheck was steady, reliable. The payment was $1,150 a month, a significant chunk of his take-home pay. But he managed it. He was meticulous. He never missed a payment. He saw the principal slowly shrink, a testament to his hard work. Over 8 years, he had paid $94,000 towards that mortgage, all of it from his own bank account, an account Bianca was not on. Bianca had filled the house with things. A $2,400 sofa from a trendy boutique uptown, a $1,200 dining set that replaced the oak one he'd bought. She had a taste for things that Marcus considered extravagances. She'd buy a $400 dress for a friend's wedding or an $80 bottle of wine for a casual dinner. When he'd gently question the expense, she'd wave a dismissive hand. "We have to live, Marcus. We can't just hoard every penny." He let it go. He wanted her to be happy. He showed his love through acts of service, not arguments over a credit card bill. He was the one who fixed the garbage disposal when it jammed, who patched the drywall when the movers scuffed it, who spent a whole Saturday installing a new ceiling fan in their bedroom, a $150 Hunter fan he'd gotten on sale. He packed her lunch in the mornings when she was running late and made sure her 2018 Honda Civic, a $22,000 car, always had a full tank of gas. 2 years ago, Bianca had lost her job. The law firm downsized. She was devastated. Marcus held her and told her not to worry. "I've got us," he'd said. "Take your time. Find something you love." She never did. She spoke of starting an online business, of getting a real estate license, of becoming a consultant. None of it ever materialized. Her days were spent shopping, having lunch with friends and watching television. The joint credit card bills, which he paid off every month, began to climb. First, it was an extra $200, then $500. Soon it was over $1,000 a month in charges he couldn't account for. Clothes from Belk, lunches at fancy South Park restaurants, subscriptions to services they never used. Still, he paid it. This was his wife. This was his marriage. You weathered the storms together. He had no idea he was weathering it alone, and that she was building a storm of her own. The $94,000 he'd paid into their home, he viewed as an investment in their future. She, it turned out, viewed it as a fund for hers. The first sign of the escalating betrayal came 6 months ago, disguised as a family crisis. Loretta called Bianca, weeping. She was being evicted from her luxury condo in Ballantine. She'd lost her part-time job as a hostess, she claimed, and had fallen behind on the $2,200 monthly payments. "I have nowhere to go," she'd wailed over the phone. Bianca had come to Marcus with tears in her eyes. "My mother has to come live with us. It's just temporary. Just until she gets back on her feet." Marcus had reservations. His relationship with Loretta had always been strained. She looked at his job, his simple tastes, his quiet nature, with a barely concealed disdain. She was a woman who valued appearances above all else, the right address, the right brands, the right kind of husband for her daughter. An HVAC technician with dirt under his fingernails was not it, but he saw the distress on his wife's face, and he relented. "Of course," he said. "She's your mother. Our home is her home." He had made a critical mistake. Loretta arrived with 6 suitcases, mostly filled with designer clothes he knew she couldn't afford, a $3,000 Gucci handbag, a closet's worth of dresses from boutiques Marcus had never heard of. She immediately began to remake his home in her image. She replaced his simple cotton curtains with heavy, ornate drapes that cost $800 and blocked out all the natural light. She filled the living room with potpourri that gave Marcus a headache. She complained about everything. The coffee was too weak. The mattress in the guest room was too firm. The neighborhood was too loud. Her cruelties were constant and casual. Little verbal paper cuts designed to bleed him dry. One evening, as he was washing his hands for dinner, she looked at them and sneered. "You should really scrub under your nails, Marcus. You have the hands of a common laborer." He looked at his hands. They were the hands that had paid for this house, for the food on the table, for the very sink she was leaning against. He glanced at Bianca, who was setting out the plates. She said nothing. She just pretended not to hear. The silence was an endorsement. That night, the outrage began to accumulate, a slow, hot pressure building in his chest. The financial bleed intensified. Loretta needed things. A new $800 television for her room because the old one was giving her eye strain. Weekly trips to the salon for a $75 manicure and pedicure. Bianca would put it all on the joint credit card. "It's just to help her feel normal again, honey," she'd say. "Her confidence is shattered." Marcus's savings account, which once held a comfortable $10,000 cushion, dwindled to less than $2,000. He started taking on more side jobs, working weekends, coming home exhausted, his body aching, only to be met with Loretta's complaints and Bianca's placid indifference. The subject of the Ballantine condo became a recurring theme. It turned out Loretta hadn't just rented, she'd owned it. And Marcus had a vague, uncomfortable memory of why. Years ago, shortly after they were married, Bianca had asked him to co-sign a loan for her mother. Loretta's credit was poor, and she needed a co-signer to secure the mortgage on the $450,000 property. Bianca had framed it as a simple formality. "You won't have to pay anything, baby. It's just to get her approved." What she'd glossed over was that he wasn't just a co-signer, he was the primary borrower. He had used the $50,000 inheritance from his late father as the down payment, a fact he'd tried to put out of his mind because it felt like a betrayal of his father's memory. Loretta was supposed to make all the payments. And for years, she had, until she stopped. "If you had just been willing to help me with a few payments," Loretta said one night at the dinner table, pushing a piece of roasted chicken around her plate, "I would never have lost my home. A good son-in-law would have stepped up." "We couldn't afford it, Mother," Bianca said softly. But there was an edge to her voice, an accusation aimed at Marcus. He was sitting in his workshop in the small, detached garage, a space that was his last remaining sanctuary. The air smelled of sawdust and motor oil. He was cleaning his tools, a meditative ritual that usually calmed his frayed nerves. He'd just finished wiping down a set of wrenches when his phone, a 3-year-old Samsung Galaxy S9 he'd bought refurbished for $250, buzzed on the workbench. He glanced at the screen. It was an email. The subject line read, "Mecklenburg County Register of Deeds, Document Alert." He frowned. Years ago, when they first bought the house, he'd signed up for a free county service that sent an alert whenever a document was filed against your property. A lien, a mortgage, a deed transfer. It was a simple fraud protection measure. He'd forgotten he'd even done it. He had never received an alert before. His heart began to beat a little faster. He wiped his greasy hands on a rag and picked up the phone. He tapped open the email. His eyes scanned the text. "Dear property owner, this is an automated notification that a new document has been recorded with the Mecklenburg County Register of Deeds office associated with your name and property address. Document type, quitclaim deed. Document ID 2023-QC-481516. Date recorded. Tuesday, April 18th. For more details or to view the document image, please visit our website." Quitclaim deed, Tuesday, 3 days ago. A cold dread washed over him. He fumbled with the phone, his fingers suddenly clumsy. He clicked the link. The county website loaded slowly, each second stretching into an eternity. He entered the document ID. A PDF icon appeared. He tapped it. The document materialized on his small screen. It was a standard legal form, filled with dense black text, but 3 words jumped out at him from the top section. Grantor, Bianca N. Williams. Grantee, Loretta M. Davis. He felt the air leave his lungs. Grantor. The person giving the property away. Grantee. The person receiving it. His eyes darted down the page to the property description. Lot 14, Block 7, Oakwood Park Subdivision. Their address, his address. Bianca had signed the house over to her mother. The room began to tilt. The smell of oil was suddenly nauseating. He scrolled down, his thumb shaking. He saw Bianca's looping, familiar signature at the bottom, and next to it, a notary seal. How? How could she do this without him? They were both on the deed. It required both their signatures. He sat down heavily on a wooden stool, his legs weak. He stared at the phone, at the digital image of the document that had just stolen his home, his future, the $94,000 of his sweat and labor. He could hear Bianca and Loretta laughing inside the house, the sound drifting through the open workshop door. It was a high, careless sound, the laughter of people who believed they had gotten away with something. He felt a wave of pure, cold rage, followed by an unnerving calm. The pressure that had been building in his chest for months didn't explode. It solidified, turning into something hard and sharp. He didn't know all the legal details yet, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. This was not just an argument. This was war. and they had just made the catastrophic mistake of underestimating their opponent. He walked back into the house, his movements stiff and deliberate. He slipped the phone into his pocket, the screen with the damning deed still illuminated, a cold rectangle pressed against his thigh. Bianca and Loretta were on the couch, watching a reality television show where wealthy women screamed at each other over dinner. They didn't look up as he entered. To them, he was just part of the furniture. He went to the kitchen and poured a glass of water, his hand steady. He drank it down, the cool liquid doing nothing to quench the fire in his gut. He was playing a role now, the part of the beaten-down husband they expected him to be. He had to maintain the facade. He had to wait. An hour later, the performance began. Loretta stood up with a dramatic sigh, turning off the television. "Well, I can't stand it anymore," she announced to the room. "I simply cannot live in a place where I feel so unwelcome, so unappreciated." Bianca rose to her feet, turning to face Marcus. Her expression was one of grave disappointment, as if he'd failed a critical test. "Mother is leaving, Marcus. She's going to go stay with her sister in Gastonia. Because of you." Marcus remained silent, his face a carefully constructed mask of weary confusion. He leaned against the kitchen counter, watching them. "This is your last chance to make this right," Bianca said, her voice dropping to a low, serious tone. She walked towards him, stopping a few feet away. She crossed her arms. "You are going to beg my mother to stay. You are going to get down on your knees and apologize for every single thing you've done to make her feel uncomfortable in this house." Loretta watched from the doorway, a smug, triumphant look on her face. "If you don't," Bianca continued, her voice turning to steel, "then I am leaving with her. Tonight. You will lose both of us. Do you understand me, Marcus? Beg her, or we're both leaving." The ultimatum hung in the air, a declaration of war. They thought they held all the cards. They had the house, or so they believed. They had his love, his loyalty, which they saw as a weakness to be exploited. He looked from Bianca's cold, demanding face to Loretta's victorious smirk. He felt the phone in his pocket. He thought of the quitclaim deed. He thought of the $94,000. He thought of his father's $50,000 inheritance. And in that moment, something inside him broke, not with a crash, but with a quiet, decisive snap. The love he had felt for his wife curdled into something cold and unrecognizable. He said nothing. He just stared at her, his silence a void they couldn't interpret. "Well," Bianca snapped, her patience wearing thin, "are you going to let your pride destroy your marriage?" He pushed himself off the counter and walked slowly past her, into his workshop. He closed the door behind him. He needed to think. He needed a plan. Through the thin door he could hear them whispering. "He's cracking," Loretta said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "Give him an hour. He'll come crawling back." He had no idea how wrong she was. The next morning, Saturday, he woke up before them. He went into the kitchen and made coffee, the $500 Cuisinart machine gurgling softly in the quiet house. He made a full breakfast, scrambled eggs, bacon, toast, an act of service just like always. It was the perfect cover. Bianca and Loretta came into the kitchen looking surprised. "Oh," Bianca said, a little thrown off balance. "You cooked?" "I'm thinking," Marcus said, his voice quiet. He placed a plate in front of each of them. He didn't sit down. He just drank his coffee standing by the counter. They ate, exchanging glances over his head. They believed his domestic gesture was the beginning of his surrender. They believed his quietness was shame. While they ate the breakfast he'd prepared in the house they'd stolen, he was in his workshop on his laptop, a $700 Dell he'd bought for invoicing. He was composing an email. The recipient was Ava Hayes, a real estate attorney his boss had once recommended. The subject line was urgent, fraudulent, quitclaim deed. In the body of the email, he attached the PDF of the deed and a brief, precise summary of the situation. He hit send at 8:14 a.m. Later that afternoon, he went out to mow the lawn. The push mower, a reliable $200 Craftsman, sputtered to life. He pushed it back and forth across the small yard, the blades chewing through the thick spring grass. He was mowing the lawn of a house that was no longer legally his. The absurdity of it was almost comical. Bianca came out onto the porch, a glass of iced tea in her hand. "Have you thought about what you're going to do?" she asked, her tone impatient, as if he were a disobedient child. Marcus stopped the mower and wiped the sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. He looked at her, standing there in her expensive lounge set, a woman who had betrayed him in the most fundamental way possible. He felt a strange sense of detachment, as if he were watching a movie. "I'm thinking," he repeated calmly. He pulled the cord on the mower and started it again, the roar of the engine ending the conversation. Each lie, each moment he feigned normalcy, was another brick in the wall he was building around himself, a wall they would soon find was impenetrable. At 2:30 p.m. on Saturday, Marcus's phone rang. It was an unknown number. He answered it in his workshop. "This is Marcus Williams." "Mr. Williams, this is Ava Hayes. I received your email. I had a cancellation, and your situation strikes me as time sensitive. Do you have 30 minutes to talk?" Her voice was crisp, professional, and no nonsense. Marcus felt a surge of relief. "Yes, ma'am, I have all the time in the world." They spoke for an hour. He sat on his wooden stool, the workshop door closed, and laid out the entire story. The mortgage he'd paid alone, the $94,000, his father's $50,000 inheritance used for Loretta's condo, the constant insults, the ultimatum. He sent her the original deed to the bungalow, which he kept in a fireproof box in his closet. Ava was silent for a long moment after he finished. Then she said, "Mr. Williams, they have made a very, very big mistake." She had pulled up the original deed while they were on the phone. "I'm looking at your deed right now. It's a tenancy by the entirety. Standard for a married couple in North Carolina. Do you see Clause 11B? Marcus scrolled through the document on his laptop. He found it. "Any conveyance, transfer, or encumbrance of the property herein described is null and void without the notarized written consent of both Marcus Williams and Bianca Williams." "Exactly," Ava said. "She could not legally transfer this property without your signature on the quitclaim deed. Did you sign it?" "No, never." "Then the deed is fraudulent. The notary is either forged or was party to the fraud. Either way, we can get this invalidated." "It's an easy win. We'll file an emergency petition for declaratory judgment and a LI's pendants on the property first thing Monday morning. That will freeze the title and prevent your mother-in-law from trying to sell it or take a loan against it." The plan was clear, a path through the fog. "What does that cost?" Marcus asked. "My retainer is $5,000, Ava said. The filing fees will be around $450, but given the clear fraud, we can petition the court to have Bianca cover your legal fees in the final settlement." Marcus looked at his dwindling bank account. It would take almost everything he had left. "Okay," he said without hesitation. "Let's do it." Then Ava turned to the second piece of the puzzle. "Now about this condo in Ballantyne," she said, her voice taking on a strategic edge. "You said you're the primary borrower and used a $50,000 inheritance for the down payment?" "That's right," Marcus confirmed. "I'm pulling the public records now," Ava said, the sound of her keyboard clicking softly. "Okay, I see it. The mortgage is with Truist Bank, Original loan amount was $400,000, and, oh, this is interesting. There's a notice of default filed 2 weeks ago. She's 90 days past due. They're about to initiate foreclosure. Marcus's stomach tightened. He hadn't known it was that serious. "This is our leverage, Marcus," Ava explained, her voice sharp with focus. "A foreclosure will destroy her credit for 7 years. The bank doesn't want the property, they want the money. We can approach the bank on your behalf. You offer to assume the loan entirely, catching up the missed payments and absolving Loretta of the debt. In exchange, she signs the deed over to you. You'd be saving her from foreclosure. You'd be the good guy." The beautiful, brutal irony of it was not lost on Marcus. He would take her precious $450,000 condo, not by force, but by saving her from her own irresponsibility. "She'd be signing it over to me," he repeated, the words tasting like victory. "She'll have no choice," Ava said. "It's either that or a foreclosure auction. We present the offer to her attorney at the same time we serve Bianca with the lawsuit for the fraudulent deed and divorce papers. We hit them on all fronts at once. By the end of next week, you should have your house back, a new rental property, and a clear path to ending your marriage." The plan was brilliant. It was methodical. It was final. When Marcus hung up the phone, the rage he felt had been transmuted into a cold, hard purpose. He was no longer a victim. He was a strategist. He had the law on his side, and he had the truth. They had started a war, but he was going to be the one to finish it. Sunday night descended on the small bungalow, thick with unspoken tension. The sunset painted the Charlotte sky in brilliant strokes of orange and purple, but Marcus, standing by the living room window, took no notice. He was a coiled spring, a man waiting for the precise moment to act. Bianca and Loretta had spent the day packing. Their bags were now by the front door, a collection of mismatched luggage, including a few Louis Vuitton knockoffs that probably cost $200 each from a street vendor. They had made a show of it, sighing dramatically, slamming drawers, making sure he was aware of their martyrdom. The final confrontation began at 8 p.m., almost to the minute. Bianca strode into the living room, planting herself in front of Marcus, her hands on her hips. Loretta stood behind her, a sentinel of disapproval. "This is it, Marcus," Bianca said, her voice devoid of any warmth. "The bags are packed. The car is running. This is your last chance. Are you going to be a man and apologize to my mother? Or are you going to throw away our entire marriage over your stupid, selfish pride?" Marcus turned slowly from the window. He looked at his wife, at the woman he had promised to love and cherish. He saw a stranger, her features hardened by greed and arrogance. He looked at Loretta, whose face was a mask of smug certainty. She truly believed he was about to crumble, to fall to his knees as they had demanded. They expected him to argue, to plead, to break down. They had written a script in their minds, and he was supposed to play his part. He did not say a word. He walked past them toward the front door. Bianca's eyes followed him, a flicker of confusion in their depths. She thought he was going to block the door, to make one last desperate plea. Instead, he reached past their expensive fake luggage and calmly turned the deadbolt. The click echoed in the silent room. He pulled the heavy wooden door open, letting in the cool night air, thick with the scent of jasmine from the neighbor's garden. He stepped back, creating a clear path to the world outside. He gestured with an open hand toward the darkness of the front yard, a silent invitation. Then he spoke. His voice was not angry, not sad, not pleading. It was quiet, level, and utterly final. "After you." The two words dropped into the silence like stones into a deep well. Bianca's face, which had been set in a look of righteous indignation, crumpled. Disbelief warred with confusion. Her jaw literally dropped. What? What did you just say? Loretta, for the first time in 6 months, looked genuinely shocked. Her smug expression vanished, replaced by a sputtering rage. Are you serious? You would choose this worthless little house over your own wife? Bianca found her voice, and it was a shriek. You can't do this, Marcus. You can't just let me walk away. Loretta, regaining her footing, added the final fatal blow. Besides, this house isn't even yours anymore, you fool, she spat, her words a venomous confirmation of her own crime. Marcus's expression did not change. He remained a statue of quiet resolve, holding the door open. The silence that followed was his answer. It was more powerful than any argument, more cutting than any insult. It was the sound of their power evaporating. They had built their entire plan on the assumption of his weakness, of his love for Bianca. They had never considered the possibility that he would simply let them go. They stood there for a long, agonizing moment, their bluff called, their script in tatters. They expected him to break, to say something, anything. He did not. With a scream of pure frustration, Bianca grabbed her bags. "Fine," she yelled, her voice cracking. "Fine. Don't ever call me again. You will regret this for the rest of your life." Loretta, her face purple with fury, snatched her own luggage and stormed out after her daughter. They threw the bags into the trunk of Bianca's Honda Civic, the car he paid the insurance on. The engine roared to life, and the car peeled away from the curb, its tires screeching in protest. Marcus watched until their taillights disappeared around the corner. Then slowly, he closed the front door. The latch clicked shut, a sound of profound finality. He leaned his forehead against the cool wood, and for the first time in 6 months, he breathed freely in his own home. The quiet was no longer suffocating. It was a blessing. The strike was complete. The consequences were about to begin. The cascade began Monday morning. At precisely 9:01 a.m., Ava Hayes filed the emergency petition and the L.I.'s pendants with the Mecklenburg County Clerk of Court. The documents were time-stamped, officially freezing the title to the bungalow on West Boulevard. No one could sell it, borrow against it, or transfer it until the court ruled on Marcus's claim of fraud. At 10:30 a.m., Loretta, attempting to check the status of her new asset online, received an automated notification. Title status, contested. List pendants filed. Her blood ran cold. She immediately called Bianca, her voice a frantic squawk. "What does this mean? What did he do?" At 11 a.m., Bianca's phone buzzed. It was an email from an address she didn't recognize. The subject line was chillingly formal. Invalid conveyance of property and notice of intent to file for divorce. It was from Ava Hayes, attorney at law. Bianca opened it in the lobby of the $120 a night Extended Stay America, where they were staying. The email was a surgical strike. It laid out in excruciating legal detail the fraudulent nature of the quitclaim deed, citing Clause 11B of the original property agreement. It informed her that a petition to have the deed declared null and void had already been filed. And then came the second blow. The email detailed the notice of default on the Ballantine condo and formally presented Marcus's offer: sign over the deed to him, and he would assume the mortgage, saving Loretta from foreclosure and ruin. They had 24 hours to respond. The voicemails began at 11:05 a.m. Marcus was on a job site in Dilworth, installing a 5-ton commercial unit, his phone silent in his truck. He listened to them all on his lunch break, one after another, a real-time recording of a mind unraveling. The first message, time-stamped 11:05 a.m., was pure rage. "Marcus, what did you do? What the hell is this email? You call me back right now. You have no right." The second, at 12:15 p.m., shifted to justification, her voice high and defensive. "You forced my hand. You know you did. You were so disrespectful to my mother. You left me with no choice. This is your fault, Marcus." The third, at 2:30 p.m., was pleading. The anger had been replaced by a dawning panic. "Okay, look. Maybe we overreacted. I overreacted. We can talk about this. I'm sure we can work something out. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Just call me, baby, please." The fourth, at 4 p.m., was sheer horror. She had obviously spoken to her mother and realized the full scope of their predicament. "They're going to take the condo? My mother's condo? Marcus, you can't let that happen. That's all she has left. You can't be that cruel. Please, Marcus, don't do this to her." He didn't respond to a single one. On Tuesday morning, a process server delivered foreclosure papers to Loretta at the hotel. At the same time, Truist Bank's legal department received and accepted the offer from Ava Hayes on behalf of Marcus Williams. The deal was done. On Wednesday, a second process server found Bianca in the hotel parking lot and served her with divorce papers. The petition cited financial fraud and adultery, as Ava had uncovered the mounting credit card bills included charges for hotel rooms in the city booked on weekday afternoons. The illusion of their marriage was officially and irrevocably shattered. The financial fallout was swift and brutal. Bianca was now facing a lawsuit that would almost certainly leave her responsible for Marcus's $5,000 legal fees. Her name was on a joint credit card with over $15,000 of debt, which, in the divorce, would be assigned solely to her. The $3,000 Gucci bag and the closet full of expensive clothes were meaningless assets. She had no job, no home, and a mountain of debt. Loretta had lost everything. Her precious $450,000 condo now belonged to the common laborer she had so despised. Her credit was in tatters, and her only worldly possessions were packed in 6 suitcases in the back of her daughter's Honda Civic. They had gambled everything on Marcus's weakness, and in 2 devastating words, he had shown them his strength. 1 year later, Marcus was on his knees in the dirt, and he had never been happier. The community garden he'd started on a vacant lot down the street was thriving. Lush green tomato plants, which he'd grown from 50-cent seed packets, strained against their stakes. The sun was warm on his back, the deep brown skin of his arms luminous in the afternoon light. The bungalow was quiet, peaceful. He'd spent the winter renovating the kitchen himself, a $4,000 project that added $20,000 in value to the home. He'd installed new cabinets, a gleaming quartz countertop, and a simple, clean subway tile backsplash. The house felt like his again. Truly his. The mail that day contained a letter with a return address he didn't recognize. He opened it. The handwriting was Loretta's, shaky and thin. She was writing to complain. She was living in a small 1-bedroom apartment across town, and she was writing to her anonymous landlord to request a reduction in her $1,400 monthly rent, citing financial hardship. What she didn't know, what she would never know, was that the property management company deposited that rent check every month into a bank account owned by Marcus Williams. She was living in her old Ballantine condo, renting it back from the man she had tried to ruin. He had instructed the property manager to deny her request. Justice, he had learned, was often a quiet, administrative affair. He folded the letter and threw it in the trash. Later that evening, his phone buzzed with a text from an unsaved number. It was Bianca. "I'm sorry for everything," it read, just the 4 words. A year too late and $1 million short. He looked at the message feeling not anger, not sadness, but a profound and liberating indifference. He had already forgiven them, not for their sake, but for his. He had carried the anger and betrayal long enough. Forgiving them was like putting down a heavy bag he hadn't realized he was carrying. He deleted the text and blocked the number. A little girl from the neighborhood, a sweet 7-year-old named Maya, whose family tended the plot next to his, ran up to him as he was locking the garden gate. Her natural hair was done in beautiful twists that bounced as she ran, colorful beads clicking at the ends. She handed him a folded piece of construction paper. "This is for you, Mr. Marcus." He unfolded it. It was a child's drawing, rendered in brown and green and yellow crayon. It depicted a tall black man with a big smile, Marcus, standing in the middle of a vibrant garden under a bright, smiling sun. At the bottom, Maya had written, "Thank you for the tomatoes." He smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached his eyes. He walked home and taped the drawing to the front of his new $1,600 stainless steel refrigerator. It was more valuable to him than any deed, any title, any dollar amount. He had learned a hard lesson. A house is just wood and nails and wires. You can buy it, you can sell it, it can even be stolen. But a home, a true home, is built from respect and trust and peace. You can't buy that, and you can't steal it. You have to build it yourself. True wealth isn't what you own. It's the character you build when everything is taken from you. It's the quiet satisfaction of planting a seed and watching it grow. It's the peace that comes after the storm, when you realize that sometimes holding a door open is the only way to truly close a chapter and start a new one. What do you think Marcus should do with the rent money from Loretta's condo? Should he save it, invest it, or donate it to the community garden? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing from the Love Beyond Pride community.